November 1942. The city of Stalingrad lies in ruins, a battleground soaked in blood and ash. The German Sixth Army, once the pride of the Third Reich, stands on the brink of victory, or so they believe. But as the first snowflakes fall, a merciless winter descends, plunging the battlefield into a frozen hell. Temperatures plummet to 30 degrees below zero. Frostbite gnaws at fingers and toes, starvation stalks both sides, and in the icy shadows, the Soviet Red Army prepares a trap that could change the course of World War II. How did this brutal winter turn the tide against the Third Reich? Could the German soldiers have survived the icy grip of Stalingrad? And what secrets lie buried in the snow of this deadly battlefield? Welcome to Stalingrad's frozen hell, where the winter unleashed a nightmare that turned World War II upside down. The Battle of Stalingrad begins in the summer of 1942, a clash that will etch its name in history as the bloodiest battle ever fought. To understand how this frozen hell came to be, we must first travel back to the early years of World War II, when the Third Reich seemed unstoppable. By 1942, Nazi Germany, under Adolf Hitler's iron rule, has conquered much of Europe. From the shores of France to the borders of the Soviet Union, Hitler's war machine has crushed all resistance. Poland, France, the Low Countries, all have fallen to the Blitzkrieg, a lightning-fast strategy of coordinated air and ground assault that leaves enemies reeling. But Hitler's ambitions stretch far beyond Western Europe. He dreams of a vast empire, a 1,000-year Reich, that will dominate the world. To achieve this, he turns his gaze eastward to the Soviet Union, a land rich in resources and space for his vision of Lebensraum, or living space, for the German people. On June 22, 1941, Hitler launches Operation Barbarossa, the largest military invasion in history. 3 million Axis troops, supported by thousands of tanks and aircraft, storm across the Soviet border. The Red Army, caught off guard, suffers catastrophic losses. Within months, the Germans capture vast swaths of territory, including Ukraine and Belarus, and push to within 15 miles of Moscow. But the Soviet winter of 1941 to 1942 slows the German advance. The Red Army, bolstered by fresh Siberian divisions, launches a counter-offensive that drives the Germans back from Moscow. For the first time, the Third Reich tastes defeat. Undeterred, Hitler doubles down. In the spring of 1942, he launches a new offensive, Operation Blue, aimed at capturing the oil fields of the Caucasus and the industrial city of Stalingrad on the Volga River. Stalingrad, named after Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, is more than a strategic target. It's a symbol. Hitler believes that taking the city will break the Soviet will to fight and secure his southern flank for the push into the Caucasus. The German Sixth Army, led by General Friedrich Paulus, spearheads the assault. Paulus, a meticulous and loyal commander, commands over 300,000 men, supported by the 4th Panzer Army and Luftwaffe bombers. By August 1942, they reach the outskirts of Stalingrad, their confidence unshaken. The Luftwaffe unleashes a devastating bombing campaign, dropping thousands of tons of explosives on the city. Entire districts are reduced to rubble. Civilians flee or hunker down in basements, while fires rage through the streets. Elena Ivanova, a Stalingrad resident who survived the initial bombings, later recalled, "The sky turned black with planes. Bombs fell like rain, shaking the earth. My home collapsed around me, and I crawled into the basement with my children. We could hear the screams outside, people burning, dying. I thought the world was ending." The Soviets, however, refused to surrender. Stalin, determined to hold the city at all costs, issues Order Number 227 on July 28, 1942. Not a step back. The order is ruthless. Any soldier who retreats without orders faces execution by NKVD firing squads. Soviet troops, knowing the stakes, dig in amidst the ruins. Vasily Zaitsev, a Soviet sniper who would become a legend in Stalingrad, wrote in his memoirs, "We knew the city was our last stand. Every street, every building became a fortress. We fought for every inch, knowing retreat meant death, not just from the Germans, but from our own side. Stalingrad was our line in the sand." The Germans, expecting a swift victory, are unprepared for the ferocity of Soviet resistance. The city's narrow streets and shattered buildings negate the German advantage in tanks and artillery, turning the battle into a grueling war of attrition. Snipers like Zaitsev take a deadly toll, picking off German soldiers one by one. Wilhelm Hoffmann, a German soldier in the 6th Army, wrote in his diary on October 15, 1942, "This city is a meat grinder. We take a building, the Russians take it back. My comrades are dying by the dozens every day. Yesterday I lost my best friend to a sniper's bullet. He was shot through the head while eating his rations. I don't know how much longer we can hold on." By early November, the German advance grinds to a halt. The 6th Army controls 90% of Stalingrad, but their victory comes at a staggering cost. Over 100,000 German soldiers have been killed or wounded since the battle began. Supply lines, stretching hundreds of miles across the Russian steppe, are dangerously thin. Food, fuel, and ammunition grow scarce. German commanders, aware of the approaching winter, plead for reinforcements and supplies. But Hitler, obsessed with capturing Stalingrad, dismisses their concerns. He believes the Red Army is on the verge of collapse. That one final push will win the day. On November 9, 1942, the first snow falls over Stalingrad. The temperature begins to drop, and a biting wind sweeps across the Volga. The German soldiers, still wearing summer uniforms, shiver in their trenches. They have no idea that the winter, their greatest enemy yet, is about to unleash its full fury. The stage is set for a battle that will test the limits of human endurance and change the course of World War II. November 19, 1942. The temperature in Stalingrad plummets to -30 degrees Celsius, a bone-chilling cold that no soldier, no matter how brave, can ignore. The Volga River, once a lifeline for Soviet supplies, freezes solid, turning the city into an icy prison. Snowstorms rage across the steppe, blanketing the battlefield in white. For the German 6th Army, the arrival of winter is a disaster they never anticipated. The Germans are woefully unprepared for the cold. When Operation Barbarossa began in 1941, Hitler expected a quick victory before winter set in. As a result, the 6th Army was equipped for a summer campaign, light uniforms, thin boots, and no winter gear. Now, as temperatures drop, the consequences of this oversight become deadly. Frostbite sets in within hours of exposure. Soldiers' fingers and toes turn black, their skin peeling away in painful layers. Gangrene follows, forcing field medics to amputate limbs without anesthesia. Hans Müller, a German infantryman with the 6th Army, recalled the horror in a letter to his family. "My fingers turned black from the cold. I saw men crying as they tried to warm their hands over a fire, but there was no fuel. We wrapped our feet in rags, but it wasn't enough. One of my comrades lost both his legs to frostbite. He screamed until he passed out. The cold was a killer, more ruthless than any bullet." The German supply situation, already strained, becomes catastrophic. Luftwaffe airlifts, meant to deliver food, fuel, and medical supplies, are hampered by the brutal weather. Blizzards ground planes for days at a time, and Soviet anti-aircraft fire takes a heavy toll on the transports that do take off. On a good day, the 6th Army receives only 100 tons of supplies, far short of the 700 tons they need daily to sustain operations. Fritz Weber, a German officer in the 6th Army, wrote in his journal on December 2, 1942, "We haven't eaten in 3 days. My men are so weak they can barely hold their rifles." I saw a soldier collapse in the snow, dead from hunger. He was clutching a photo of his wife, his last connection to home. We're eating horse meat now when we can find it. Yesterday I saw a man boiling his leather belt just to have something in his stomach. This isn't a battle anymore. It's a death sentence. Starvation becomes a daily reality. German soldiers, once well-fed and disciplined, are reduced to scavenging for scraps. They slaughter their horses, then hunt rats in the ruins of Stalingrad. When even the rats run out, some resort to eating snow, hoping to fill their empty stomachs. Dysentery and typhus spread through the ranks, killing as many as the cold. The Soviet Red Army, while also suffering, is better equipped to endure the winter. Raised in the harsh Russian climate, Soviet soldiers are accustomed to the cold. They wear padded jackets known as telograikas and felt boots called valenki, which keep them warm even in the deepest freeze. Their supply lines, though strained, are shorter and more reliable, running across the frozen Volga to nearby Soviet positions. Ivan Petrov, a Soviet soldier with the 62nd Army, later shared, "The cold was our ally. We knew how to fight in it. The Germans didn't. I saw their bodies frozen stiff in the snow, their faces blue, their hands clutching empty rifles. Some had tried to build fires with the last of their ammunition crates, but it wasn't enough. It was pitiful, but we had no mercy. We couldn't afford it. Stalingrad was a fight to the death." The winter doesn't just affect the soldiers, it transforms the battlefield itself. Snowdrifts, some as high as 6 feet, bury trenches and tanks, making movement nearly impossible. Ice coats the ground, turning every step into a potential fall. Weapons freeze in the extreme cold, their mechanisms jamming. German machine guns like the MG-42 become useless when their oil congeals. Soviet rifles, designed for sub-zero temperatures, fare better, giving the Red Army a critical edge. The psychological toll of the winter is immense. For the Germans, the constant cold, hunger, and isolation erode morale. Letters home, intercepted by Soviet intelligence, reveal the depth of their despair. One German soldier wrote to his mother on December 10th, "I can't feel my hands anymore. The cold never stops. We're surrounded and there's no way out. I dream of home, of warmth, but I know I'll never see it again." For the Soviets, the winter brings its own hardships, but also a renewed sense of purpose. The cold, while harsh, is familiar. Soviet soldiers draw strength from their resilience, knowing that every day they hold out brings them closer to victory. Elena Ivanova, the Stalingrad resident who survived the initial bombings, described the winter's impact on the city's civilians. "We had no heat, no food. The snow came through the cracks in our basement walls. My youngest son, only 5 years old, cried from the cold every night. I gave him my coat, but it wasn't enough. We boiled snow for water, but there was nothing to eat. I saw neighbors eating frozen rats just to stay alive. The winter was a monster. It took so many of us." The German High Command, far from the front lines, struggles to grasp the scale of the crisis. Hermann Göring, head of the Luftwaffe, promises Hitler that his planes can supply the 6th Army through the winter. But Göring's promise is a hollow one. The Luftwaffe, already stretched thin across multiple fronts, cannot deliver enough supplies to sustain the trapped army. By late December, the German 6th Army is a shadow of its former self. Once a disciplined fighting force, it is now a collection of starving, freezing men, clinging to survival in a frozen hell. The winter has become a weapon, one that the Soviets are about to wield with devastating effect. November 19th, 1942. The Soviet Red Army launches Operation Uranus, a meticulously planned counteroffensive designed to encircle the German Sixth Army and turn the tide of the Battle of Stalingrad. Soviet generals Georgy Zhukov and Alexander Vasilevsky have spent weeks preparing for this moment. They know the German position is vulnerable, stretched thin across a front line that spans hundreds of miles. The German flanks, north and south of Stalingrad, are held by poorly equipped Romanian, Italian, and Hungarian troops, Axis allies who lack the training and morale of the German Wehrmacht. Zhukov and Vasilevsky see an opportunity to exploit this weakness, and they seize it with ruthless precision. At dawn on November 19th, Soviet artillery opens fire, pounding the Romanian positions with a barrage that shakes the frozen earth. Soviet tanks, equipped with wider tracks to navigate the snow, roll forward, followed by waves of infantry. The Romanians, already demoralized by the cold and lack of supplies, collapse under the assault. Within hours, the Soviet 65th Army breaks through in the north, while the 21st Army smashes through in the south. Karl Schmidt, a German corporal stationed on the northern flank, wrote in his diary on November the 23rd, "The Russians came out of the snow like ghosts. We couldn't see them until they were on top of us. The Romanians fled, leaving us exposed. Our artillery was useless. The shells froze in the barrels. I saw a tank crush one of my comrades under its tracks. I knew then we were doomed." By November 23rd, the Soviet pincers meet at Kalach, west of Stalingrad, closing the trap. 290,000 Axis troops, mostly Germans, but also Romanians, Italians, and Hungarians, are encircled in a pocket roughly 30 miles wide. The German Sixth Army, once the spearhead of the Third Reich's Eastern campaign, is now cut off from the outside world. The winter plays a crucial role in the Soviet success. Soviet T-34 tanks, designed for the Russian climate, move with ease through the snow and ice, their engines roaring as they outmaneuver the German panzers. The Germans, on the other hand, struggle to keep their tanks operational. Fuel freezes in the lines and engines fail in the extreme cold. German infantry, weakened by hunger and frostbite, are no match for the Soviet assault. Dmitry Volkov, a Soviet tank commander who fought in Operation Uranus, later recalled, "The snow was our friend. Our tanks could move where the Germans couldn't. I saw their panzers stuck in the drifts, their crews trying to dig them out with their bare hands. We didn't stop. We couldn't. We knew this was our chance to end the battle." Hitler, receiving reports of the encirclement at his headquarters in East Prussia, is furious. He refuses to accept defeat, declaring no retreat. He orders the Sixth Army to hold its ground, promising a massive Luftwaffe airlift to supply the trapped troops. Field Marshal Erich von Manstein, one of Germany's most brilliant strategists, is tasked with organizing a relief operation, Operation Winter Storm, to break through the Soviet lines and rescue the Sixth Army. But the Luftwaffe airlift, like Göring's earlier promises, is a failure. Blizzards ground planes for days, and Soviet fighters and anti-aircraft guns shoot down dozens of transports. On December 10th, a German pilot, Hans Richter, wrote in his log, "We flew into a nightmare. The sky was full of Soviet fighters, and the ground was a sea of snow. I saw one of our planes go down in flames, its cargo of food and medicine burning in the wreckage. We couldn't get through. It was suicide." Operation Winter Storm, launched on December 12th, initially makes progress. Manstein's 4th Panzer Army advances to within 30 miles of the Stalingrad pocket, raising hopes among the trapped German soldiers. But Soviet reinforcements, including the Second Guards Army, halt the German advance by December 23rd. The relief effort stalls and Manstein is forced to withdraw, leaving the Sixth Army to its fate. Inside the pocket, conditions deteriorate rapidly. Food rations are reduced to a few ounces of bread per day, sometimes as little as 50 grams, barely enough to sustain life. Soldiers burn their last reserves of fuel to stay warm, huddling in makeshift shelters dug into the snow. Frostbite and disease claim more lives than Soviet bullets. Maria Petrova, a Soviet nurse stationed on the front lines, witnessed the aftermath of the wreck. Encirclement. We captured German soldiers who looked like skeletons. They begged for food, for warmth. One man cried as he showed me his frostbitten feet, black and rotting. He said he hadn't eaten in a week, that his unit had been eating snow to survive. I felt pity, but we couldn't help them. The war wouldn't let us. We had our own wounded to care for. The winter, once a mere backdrop to the battle, has become a weapon in the hands of the Soviets. It cripples the Third Reich's war machine, exposing the fatal flaws in Hitler's strategy. The German Sixth Army, surrounded and starving, faces a grim reality. There will be no escape from Stalingrad's frozen hell. But the battle is far from over. The coming weeks will test the limits of human endurance and reveal the true cost of survival in this icy nightmare. January 1943. The German Sixth Army is on the brink of annihilation. The Soviet ring around the Stalingrad pocket tightens with each passing day, shrinking to a mere 15 miles wide by mid-January. The German soldiers, now numbering fewer than 150,000, are a shadow of their former selves. Starvation, frostbite, and disease have taken a horrific toll. Dysentery and typhus spread through the ranks, killing thousands. Frostbite claims fingers, toes, and lives, with field hospitals overwhelmed by the sheer number of casualties. Heinrich Bauer, a German soldier with the 94th Infantry Division, wrote in his final letter home on January 10th, "I haven't felt my toes in weeks. We're out of food, out of hope. The Russians shell us day and night, their artillery shaking the ground like an earthquake. I don't think I'll make it out of this hell. I saw a friend freeze to death last night. He just lay down in the snow and didn't get up. Tell my family I love them." Bauer died 3 days later, his body found frozen in a snowdrift, clutching his letter. The psychological toll of the winter is as deadly as the physical. German soldiers, once proud and disciplined, are reduced to despair. Letters home reveal the depth of their suffering. One soldier wrote on January 15th, "I can't stop shivering. The cold is inside me now, in my bones. I dream of my mother's cooking, of a warm fire, but I wake up to snow and death. I don't want to die here, but I don't know how to live anymore." Soviet soldiers, while also suffering, find strength in their resilience. The winter, though harsh, is a familiar enemy to them. They draw on their knowledge of the land, using the snow to conceal their movements and launch ambushes. Soviet snipers, operating in pairs, take a deadly toll on German positions, picking off soldiers who venture out to scavenge for food. Alexei Volodin, a Soviet sniper who fought in the Stalingrad pocket, recalled, "The Germans were easy targets in the snow. They moved slowly, their bodies weak from hunger. I could see the fear in their eyes through my scope. One shot, and they'd fall, their blood staining the snow red. It was cruel, but it was war. We had to break them." Hitler, still refusing to accept defeat, issues increasingly desperate orders from his headquarters in East Prussia. On January 22nd, he promotes General Paulus to Field Marshal, a rank no German officer has ever surrendered at. The message is clear: fight to the last man, or die trying. But the soldiers in Stalingrad have nothing left to give. Their rifles are frozen, their ammunition depleted. Many are too weak to stand, let alone fight. On January 31st, 1943, Paulus surrenders the southern pocket of the Sixth Army, ignoring Hitler's orders. 2 days later, on February 2nd, the northern pocket follows suit. 91,000 Axis troops are taken prisoner, a staggering loss for the Third Reich. The winter has played its deadly role. Of the 91,000 prisoners, only 5,000 will survive Soviet captivity. Most will succumb to starvation, disease, and the lingering effects of frostbite in the brutal conditions of Soviet labor camps. The Battle of Stalingrad ends with a Soviet victory, but the cost is unimaginable. Up to 2 million casualties on both sides, making it the bloodiest battle in human history. The frozen hell of Stalingrad has claimed countless lives, soldiers, civilians, and the dreams of the Third Reich. But its impact will echo far beyond the snow-covered ruins of the city. February 2nd, 1943. The Battle of Stalingrad is over, but its echoes will reverberate through history for decades to come. The German defeat at Stalingrad shatters the myth of Nazi invincibility, a myth that has sustained the Third Reich's war machine for years. For the first time, the German people, fed a steady diet of propaganda about their army's unstoppable might, are confronted with the reality of defeat. The loss of the Sixth Army, over 250,000 men killed, wounded, or captured, is a blow from which the Third Reich will never fully recover. In the Soviet Union, the victory at Stalingrad becomes a rallying cry. The Red Army, once on the brink of collapse, is galvanized by the triumph. Civilians who have endured years of hardship and loss find new hope in the knowledge that the tide of war has turned. Stalingrad becomes a symbol of Soviet resilience, a testament to the unbreakable spirit of a people fighting for their survival. The winter of 1942 to 1943 was more than a season. It was a weapon that turned the tide of World War II against the Third Reich. The German Sixth Army, once a juggernaut of the Nazi war machine, was broken by the cold, by hunger, and by the unyielding Soviet resistance. The defeat at Stalingrad marks the beginning of a long retreat for the Germans, a retreat that will end 2 years later with the fall of Berlin in May 1945. Survivors of Stalingrad carried the scars of that winter for the rest of their lives. Ivan Petrov, the Soviet soldier who fought through the battle, reflected years later, "I still dream of the snow, the bodies frozen in it. I can still hear the wind howling through the ruins, the screams of the wounded. Stalingrad was hell, but it was our hell. We won because we had to, because there was no other choice." Elena Ivanova, the Stalingrad resident, also bore the weight of those memories. "The winter took everything from me. My home, my husband, my youngest son, but it gave us victory. I'll never forget the day the Germans surrendered. We cried, not just for joy, but for all we had lost. Stalingrad was our grave, but it was also our salvation." The frozen hell of Stalingrad revealed the limits of the Third Reich's ambition. It showed that even the mightiest army could be brought to its knees, not just by bullets and bombs, but by the unrelenting force of nature. Stalingrad's winter answered the questions we posed at the start. It turned the tide against the Third Reich by empowering the Soviet counteroffensive and breaking the German will to fight. Survival in the icy grip of Stalingrad was a near impossible feat for the Germans, their lack of preparation sealing their fate. And the secrets buried in the snow, the personal stories of despair, resilience, and sacrifice, remind us of the human cost of this brutal battle. The winter of Stalingrad was a crucible, a frozen hell that turned World War II against the Third Reich. But what do you think? Could the Germans have survived the icy grip of Stalingrad if they'd been better prepared? How did this winter change the course of history? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this journey into Stalingrad's frozen hell gripped you, give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell for more epic war stories. Until next time, keep exploring history with Epic War. Keep asking questions and keep seeking the truth.